In the summer of 1993, amidst the warm scent of barbecue and the joyful chaos of a backyard birthday, a 6-year-old boy named Tommy vanished without a trace. It was his birthday, and the yard echoed with laughter, bright balloons dancing in the breeze, and the scent of cake frosting mixing with soap bubbles. Rachel Mitten, nearly 12 at the time, stood with her arms crossed, her gaze distant yet attentive. She was old enough to scoff at the party magician, but not old enough to be excused from it. This was her brother's day. Tommy, with frosting smeared on his cheeks and a paper crown slipping sideways, beamed in front of his birthday cake. For a brief moment, Rachel's usual annoyance faded. Despite everything, he was still her little brother. Then, in a breath, he was gone. No scream, no warning. 1 second he stood there, victorious over the candles, and the next, emptiness. A balloon floated upward and caught in the backyard fence, the only silent witness to a disappearance that would haunt a family forever. Rachel remembered her mother's voice cracking like glass as she screamed Tommy's name, the frantic barking of search dogs, the blinding floodlights, and officers combing through the woods. But no Tommy. Only the smoking remains of birthday candles and a slice of uneaten cake, forgotten on a sunlit table. 3 decades later, the house on Emerson Street stood still, uninhabited, but not untouched. Time had swept away the people, but it left behind the weight of memory. Rachel returned, now 39, her life marked by quiet grief and lingering questions. With no family left and the house legally hers, she was told to clean it up, sell it, move on. But Rachel knew better. Some places refuse to let go. They whisper through their walls. She stepped into the foyer, the key still warm in her palm, the door creaking in protest. Everything looked the same, the warped floorboards, the crooked baseboard where Tommy used to line up his toys. The air was thick with mildew, but beneath it, something sweeter lingered. A scent like old crayons and stale cake. She paused by the kitchen sink, drank metallic-tasting water, and read a message from her boyfriend asking if the house still felt haunted. She didn't reply. Instead, she stepped out onto the porch. The backyard had surrendered to weeds, the patio bricks cracked with age. Her eyes locked onto the chain-link fence. The spot where the red balloon had once tangled was still visible, rusted but unmistakable. She clenched her jaw. Tommy had disappeared from this yard. Dozens of people were there, and no one saw it happen. It was impossible. And yet, it happened. Rachel turned away and went upstairs. The second floor was quiet, stripped of photos and laughter, leaving only the creak of the floorboards and the faint scent of old air freshener. Her mother used to say the upstairs closet was stuck from swelling wood. As a child, Rachel believed it. Children believe what makes them feel safe. But now, staring at that locked attic door, she felt something stir. An unease, not of fear, but of recognition. The door was still locked. Later that night, after a long evening of boxing old china and sorting through relics of a family broken by time, Rachel returned with a crowbar in hand. Midnight cloaked the house in silence. She didn't knock. She didn't hesitate. Wood groaned. Metal shrieked. The door cracked open. The smell hit her first. Mothballs, rot, and something worse, decay. The kind of scent that clings to your clothes and buries itself deep in your mind. Dust hung like smoke in the tiny attic alcove. Her flashlight cut through the dark, revealing a small space barely the size of a walk-in closet. Shelves lined the wall. A broken doll. A single child's shoe, and then she saw them. Polaroids. Stacked neatly, wrapped in a rubber band aged to brittleness. Rachel's breath caught. Her hands trembled as she picked them up. The top photo was Tommy, his eyes wide, face pale, kneeling in a room she didn't recognize, clutching a stuffed bear that had vanished the same day he had. The second photo, Tommy again, older. The third, a girl Rachel didn't know. She dropped to her knees. Her body went cold. This wasn't just a closet. It was a vault, a shrine of secrets preserved in silence. Each photo captured a moment no one was meant to see. Whoever had locked that door hadn't done so out of fear, but to bury the truth. Maybe it was her parents, maybe someone else. But what mattered now was that the truth hadn't stayed buried. Rachel sat in that attic, her flashlight dimming, surrounded by haunting images and echoing silence. Her mind spun. What did these photos mean? Where had Tommy been? And why had no one ever told her what lay behind that door? She had come back to close a chapter. But now, she realized, she was only just beginning to read the story that had been hidden all along. Rachel sat frozen on the attic floor, the flickering flashlight casting trembling shadows across her face. She stared at the Polaroids, hands shaking, heart hammering. The images revealed a horrifying reality she could barely process. One after another, the photos depicted Tommy, his little body curled on a cot. No blanket, only his blue birthday shirt, eyes clouded with fear. The room was always the same, faded cartoon wallpaper, harsh artificial lighting, and a silence that screamed. Then came the faces she didn't recognize. A girl with long, tangled pigtails, her face blotchy from crying. Another child, a boy younger than Tommy. Then more, each one stiff, their expressions dulled by something deeper than sadness. These weren't photos for memory. They were for record-keeping. They looked like they belonged in an evidence locker, not an attic. Rachel flipped through them faster, nausea climbing. Some bore labels. Subject C, May 1994. D number 2 non-compliant. Group E, initial interview. These weren't merely missing children. These were participants, experiments. She stood up so fast the attic spun around her. Mildew thickened in her lungs. She barely made it downstairs before collapsing into a chair. Under the dim dining room light, she laid the photos across the warped wood table, unable to look away from Tommy's wide eyes. In one photo, his mouth was slightly parted, like he had been about to speak. Rachel opened her laptop, her fingers icy. She typed, "Missing Children, Portland, Oregon, 1993 to 1996. One match, then another, then another. Darla McCree, age 8, missing since July 1994. Last seen walking home from her aunt's house. Never found." Her image stared back from the screen, matching the pigtail girl in Rachel's hand. Rachel's stomach dropped. She dove deeper. A boy with a birthmark on his chin. A girl in a yellow jacket. A toddler with a buzz cut. Every face matched a report from the Northwest. This wasn't a coincidence. This was a pattern. Rachel gathered the Polaroids, wrapped them in a dish towel, and tucked them into her bag. Then, almost on instinct, she began searching the old document drawer where her mother had kept important papers, receipts, tax forms, medical notes, and then a folded invoice, yellowed with time. Cedar Pines Community Program, 6 months prepaid, 1992. Her mother's name, another receipt stapled to the back. Conditioning material delivered, Emerson Residence. Rachel sat back, spine like iron. She felt cold, but not from the room, from within. The kind of cold that only comes when a foundation cracks. She picked up the phone. Not the police? Not yet. She called Mara, her childhood best friend. Someone who had been there. Someone who might know more. "Hello?" Mara answered after 3 rings. "Mara, it's me. Rachel." A pause, then shocked. "Jesus, it's been decades. I need to ask you something about Tommy's party. 1993. Mara was quiet for a beat. Then, "I never forgot that day. Not once." "You were there, right? When it happened?" "Yeah, but no one asked the right questions." Rachel leaned forward. "What do you mean? I remember you being sent inside to grab paper towels. You were gone, maybe 2 minutes. Then the screaming started. But before that, Your dad kept bringing kids into the house, said it was for pictures with the magician, but there was no camera. Kids went in, came out crying. Rachel went numb. How many? 4? Maybe 5. I went in too. Nothing happened to me. But I remember the silence, the door closing. Why didn't you tell anyone? I was 11, and no one asked. Everyone assumed he wandered off. Rachel nodded. Will you come over? I need someone else to see this. Yeah, Mara said. I think I should. They hung up. Rachel stared at the Polaroids again. They looked like a deck of fate, stacked by a cruel hand. Her brother, Darla, dozens of others. And at the bottom, an envelope she hadn't noticed before. Inside, a grainy black and white photo. It was the same room, Tommy's room from the photos, but empty. In the center of the floor, chalk markings. A triangle within a circle. Beneath it, Project Promise Room C. Rachel whispered the words. They felt foreign, not from her childhood, but like something out of a classified file. Her heart pounded. At dusk, Mara arrived. Her SUV crunched the gravel driveway, headlights sweeping across a lawn now reclaimed by wild weeds. Mara looked older, short hair, lines around her eyes, but the way she stood, arms crossed, mirrored Rachel's own tension. They hugged briefly. Not affection, but solidarity. It hasn't changed much, Mara said. No, Rachel replied. That's the problem. They went inside. Mara walked the familiar hallway like someone walking through memory. The photos on the table stopped her cold. Jesus, she whispered. Is that Tommy? Rachel nodded. And others. She told her everything. The attic, the program, the symbol. Mara flipped through the Polaroids. Her hands hesitated on Darla's. I knew her. She lived near my aunt. Went missing the year after Tommy. Why didn't anyone ever connect this? Mara's face hardened. Because this town buries its tragedies, files them away, pretends it's being polite. Rachel pointed to the last photo. This symbol, you ever see it? Mara nodded slowly. Behind Elkhart Elementary, a clearing. Kids called it the Promise Circle. Same triangle and circle. Spray painted, chalk, even carved. We thought it was a game. It wasn't. No, Mara said. It wasn't. Rachel reached into a folder and pulled out the Cedar Pines receipt. That place, Mara whispered. It was shut down. Scandal. They experimented on autistic kids. Isolation, reward manipulation. They got away with it. No one went to jail. Rachel felt like her chest was being crushed. My mom had a receipt. From there. Mara said nothing. She didn't need to. Rachel stood. There's one place I haven't looked yet. The basement. They descended together. The stairs groaned under their weight. The air was wet, musty, thick with time. Light hung in a single bulb like a dying star. Rachel's foot touched the concrete floor with a thud. Boxes lined the walls. Old decorations, broken tools, abandoned machines. But one section of the far wall looked wrong. Too clean, too smooth. It didn't match the rest. Rachel pressed her hand to it. Knocked, hollow. Mara joined her. That's not original. Rachel looked at her. Number. It's not. Rachel scanned the basement, the stale air thick with dust and unspoken truths. Her eyes locked onto the crowbar she'd left near the dryer. Wordless, she grabbed it, wedging the metal between the wall and the floor. With a groan and a crack like splitting bone, the drywall gave way. Dust exploded into the air. Behind it, a door. Steel, windowless, painted the same dull beige as the wall, but distinctly different. Industrial. There was no handle, only a recessed keyhole and a faded sticker. CPC, Promise. Controlled access only. Mara stepped back, her face drained of color. Jesus Christ, it's real. It's all real. Rachel felt her breath catch, her whisper barely audible. This was under our house. All these years, they didn't need to speak. They ran upstairs, breath quick, urgency pounding between them. Rachel tore through the junk drawer in the hallway desk, searching for keys. Dozens clanked together. One tagged garage, another back gate. Then her hand closed around one unlabeled key, a small triangle etched into the metal. Back down they ran. Rachel slid the triangle key into the steel lock. A click. The door groaned open. A cold wave of air rushed out, carrying with it the scent of damp carpet, stale glue, and something chemical. She flipped on the flashlight. It wasn't a room. It was a hallway. Narrow, carpeted, fluorescent lights above, dead. The beam from the flashlight revealed numbered doors along each side. 1A, 1B, 1C. Mara covered her mouth. They built rooms down here. Rachel stepped in, her breath shallow. Silence swallowed them, broken only by their own footsteps. Dust danced in the light. Old file cabinets, folding chairs, a small refrigerator. The deeper they went, the colder the air became. Then, Rachel stopped. Room 1F. The door read, Princess Room. It was ajar. Rachel pushed it open. Inside, a child's room. Toys sat untouched on dust-coated shelves, a mural of a cartoon castle peeled from the far wall. A twin bed with faded pink sheets. A camera mount, empty, hung in one corner. The closet door hung open, revealing tiny dresses on wire hangers, many still wrapped in plastic. No one spoke. Rachel walked to the bed. On the pillow, a note, yellowed and folded. Written in a child's uneven scrawl. I was good today. Will I get the pony now? Rachel dropped to her knees, her breath shallow. She could almost hear Tommy's voice, that nervous lilt, the forced cheer in his laugh. Could see him being told to smile. Sit still. Be good. How didn't I know? She whispered. How did none of us know? Mara placed a hand on her shoulder. They didn't want us to. Rachel rose, her limbs heavy. We need to call someone. Who? Mara asked. Rachel had no answer. Because this, the photos, the rooms, the note, this wasn't an ending. It was a beginning. That night, Rachel didn't sleep. She curled on the old couch, flashlight clutched in one hand, blanket pulled to her chin. Every creak, every whisper of wind clawed at her nerves. The hallway beneath her childhood home haunted her like a second heartbeat. By morning, the sun was a pale wash against the blinds. Mara returned, wearing a hoodie, hair tied back, coffee in both hands. I couldn't sleep either, she said. Rachel took a cup. Her hands trembled. I brought my old laptop, Mara added. She pulled a Ziploc bag from her tote. Inside, 6 mini CDs and 3 VHS tapes. They had found them in a locked cabinet after discovering the Princess Room, but hadn't dared to speak of them until now. You think these are from the same people who made the photos? Rachel nodded. Same labels, same system. CPC promise? A, Subject 4, Conditioning Sequence 1. Mara slid the first disc into the drive. The screen flickered. No title, no timestamp, just a cold gray room. A mirror on one wall. A child entered the frame. Tommy. Rachel gasped. He was 6, same red shirt, same hair from his birthday party. He sat in a plastic chair, hands in his lap. A voice from off camera, flat, male, professional. Tommy, what do we do when we hear the chime? Tommy didn't answer. Tommy, what do we do when we hear the chime? He blinked, then whispered, We sit still. Good. Again. We sit still. The screen cut to black. Mara paused the playback. Rachel gripped the edge of the table. That wasn't Dad's voice. No, Mara said. Too flat, too trained. Rachel stood, pacing. Her whole body burned with fury and grief. This was a script. A conditioning routine, Mara said. Classic behavioral methods. Command, reward, repetition. She opened the second disc. Another child. A blonde girl, barefoot, sobbing quietly. Repeat after me, the voice said. I belong to Promise. Good children don't disobey. I have no home but here. Rachel turned away. Enough. Mara stopped the video. Her hands trembled. This is organized. They sat in silence, the screen frozen on the girl's blank eyes. Rachel spoke first. We need to know how deep this goes. The next 2 hours were a storm of paperwork. Documents from the basement, clipped files, intake forms, delivery logs, a master schedule labeled Cedar Pines, Project Promise, Satellite 3. Supervising Officer R. Minton. Status, active as of April 1993. Rachel stared at the name. Her mother. Satellite 3, Mara read. That means there were others. Rachel found more folders. One marked Field Notes, May 1993. Inside, pages of handwritten updates. Subject number 12. TM continues to resist commands unless prompted with food. Signs of imprinting increasing. Parental influence removed. Response to male voice authority improving. Programming sequence C underway. Rachel dropped the pages. That's Tommy. Mara opened another folder. Consent forms. Most were forged. These aren't your mom's signatures, not all of them. This was bigger. Rachel paced, her pulse deafening. This wasn't just my family. There were others. Other houses, other children. Other rooms, Mara added. By noon, the walls felt like they were closing in. Rachel needed air. She told Mara she was going for a walk. She didn't go to the park. She went to the public library. She searched the archives. Newspapers from 1991 to 1996. There it was, a tiny article. Page 6, June 1993, Portland Herald, New Youth Wellness Program. Opens second campus in Clatsop County. Cedar Pines announces new Promise Track pilot system aimed at improving emotional regulation in children facing trauma. The founder, Richard Minton, her father. Rachel felt her vision blur, not just complicit. In RA charge. By 2 p.m., she returned. Mara had organized the folders. Rachel set the article down. They didn't even hide it, she said. It was all legal, branded as therapy. Mara flipped through a folder marked Subject Archive. Princess Room. Inside, Polaroids, feeding schedules, bathroom charts, transcripts, and at the back, a map. It showed more. Jesus, Mara whispered. There's another door. Rachel studied the diagram. Behind the main hallway, a chamber marked Holding. No key, Rachel said. But we know it's there. Mara hesitated. Are you sure? I need to know. They returned to the basement. The map led them to a wall behind the utility shelves. They moved them together. Hidden behind, a bolted hatch. No knob, just a vertical handle. Rachel used the crowbar. Both women braced themselves. The hatch finally gave way with a shudder. Dust choked the air. The smell hit instantly. Rot and chemicals. A concrete chamber. No ventilation, no light. A mattress, rotted and stained. Rachel's voice cracked. God! Mara stepped back. Is this where they kept them? Before the rooms? Rachel nodded. Then she saw it. In the corner, half buried under rubble. A stuffed bear. Ear missing. Fur stained. But she knew it. She had bought it for Tommy. His 5th birthday. Rachel dropped to her knees. You were here, she whispered, the whole time. They didn't speak again for a long, long while. Rachel sat on the cold cement floor of the holding chamber, the stuffed bear cradled tightly in her arms. It was more than a toy now. It was the last physical tether to her brother, to a truth long buried. Across the room, Mara lingered in the doorway, flashlight beam flickering as she tried not to look directly at the stained mattress or the drain embedded like an open eye in the floor. Neither spoke aloud what they both knew deep inside. This wasn't just a site for conditioning. It was a prison. Maybe something worse. Eventually, Rachel rose, her movements stiff and deliberate. Let's get out of here, she said quietly. They sealed the hatch and replaced the shelves over it. No ceremony, just silent reverence, like reburying a body. Upstairs, the air tasted different, cleaner somehow, not fresh but relieved, as if the house had finally exhaled a secret it had been forced to hold for decades. Rachel scrubbed her hands 3 times in the sink, but the scent of mold and old metal clung like guilt. In the dining room, Mara had opened the last box from the princess room. An old wooden chest, her father's. There was no lock, just a latch. Rachel sat beside her, hands still trembling, and opened it. Inside, cassette tapes, dozens of them, the kind sold in dusty aisles of old radio shacks. Some were labeled with faded initials, others with just numbers. But at the bottom, wrapped in plastic and held by a crumbling rubber band, was something that made Rachel stop breathing. A child's notebook, red, spiral-bound, torn at the edges. She knew it immediately. Tommy's. They had matching ones when they were little, a tradition their mom had started for each school year. Rachel opened the cover. Big, loopy handwriting. Tommy Minton, age 6 inches. The first few pages were innocent, childish. I saw a lizard today. It was fast. I can eat 3 popsicles. Rachel can only eat 1. Then the tone shifted. The handwriting shrank, shakier, like it was written in fear. The drawings changed, stick figures locked in rooms, entire pages blacked out with crayon. And eyes, so many eyes. Rachel flipped further. They tell me to smile when the red light is on. They say I'm special, but I want to go home. Mara gasped. Another page. The room is cold. I'm not supposed to say that. If I cry, they play the sound. I hate the sound. And then a crude drawing. A triangle inside a circle. But this time, the triangle had a face. And teeth. Rachel reached the final entry, scribbled sideways in the margin. Rachel, if you find this, I'm sorry. I was bad. I tried to be good like they said. Rachel closed the notebook, her hands still, but her soul roaring. We're going to the police, she said. An hour later, they stood at the precinct. Rachel carried a battered banker's box with the tapes, the notebook, and 2 folders of documents. She thought about bringing the bear, but couldn't. Not yet. At the desk, she gave her name. Why are you here? The officer asked. She paused. Then, I found something under my house. A beat. It's about my brother's disappearance and others. 15 minutes later, Lieutenant Mark Tolan met them in the lobby. He was in his late 50s, with a steady presence that spoke of years buried in difficult truths. Rachel told him everything. The birthday party, the attic, the hidden hallway, the notebook, the symbols. No theatrics, no guesses, just facts. Mara filled in gaps. When Rachel placed the notebook in front of Tolan, he didn't touch it. He just stared at it for a long moment. Wait here, he said finally. He returned half an hour later with 2 more detectives. We're opening an investigation, effective immediately. You believe me? Rachel asked. Miss Mitten, Tolan said gravely, this isn't just a break in your brother's case. This is evidence of a coordinated criminal operation, one that may still be active. Mara shifted in her seat. We don't use the word ring lightly, Tolan continued. But that's what this is. We're executing a warrant tonight. We're coordinating with state and federal agencies. Rachel nodded slowly, then added, There's something I didn't bring in. A room, hidden in the basement, no lights, just a mattress, and Tommy's bear. Tolan exhaled. We'll find it. What if he died down there? Tolan looked at her directly. Then we find out who did it, and we make sure it never happens again. That night, agents filled her childhood home. FBI crime scene tape fluttered in the evening breeze. Floodlights lit the yard like midday. Rachel stood on the porch, arms crossed, nerves worn thin. Agent Lowry from the FBI's Child Exploitation Task Force approached. We've seen setups like this before, often fragmented across multiple sites. You think it's still happening? Yes. Rachel sat on the porch steps as officers entered the holding chamber. One emerged with tears in his eyes. At 3 a.m., she was allowed back inside. An officer handed her Tommy's notebook, now in an evidence bag. "Keep it for now," he said. "We'll need a copy. But this belongs to you." She sat in the kitchen, flashlight dim beside her, and flipped to the final page. Her fingers traced her brother's apology. For the first time in 30 years, she said his name aloud. "Tommy, it wasn't your fault." The investigation lasted 2 full days. Teams rotated around the clock. Agent Lowry reviewed tapes and digital files. On the 3rd day, Tolan summoned Rachel back. She expected questions. Instead, he laid out a map. Red stickers marked locations across Portland and nearby counties. Some crossed out, others circled. "This was hidden under the Princess Room bed," Tolan said. 7 confirmed sites, 4 in Oregon, 3 in Washington. Your house was Satellite 3. Rachel felt her knees weaken. "1 is still active," he added. "We're planning a raid. Tonight." That evening, Rachel sat in an unmarked FBI vehicle with Agent Lowry outside a modest home in Beaverton. Pale siding, chain-link fence. It looked ordinary. It wasn't. The raid was swift. Tactical lights, breach. 5 minutes of silence, then multiple miners. Alive. Rachel didn't cry. She couldn't. But something inside her finally unlocked. "You just exposed a trafficking network," Lowry said softly. "Possibly nationwide." By morning, it was all over the news. Cult-like child conditioning network exposed. Rachel gave no interviews. She stayed at the house another week, helping catalog what she could, reclaiming what was hers. Then, on the 8th day, a knock at the door. A man, mid-40s, pale, nervous, familiar in a way that stirred something in her gut. "My name is David Carnes," he said. "I think I knew your brother." Rachel froze. David explained that he'd been in Cedar Pines in 1992, age 7. He couldn't remember his birth name, but he remembered Tommy, a boy who sang when the lights went out, a boy with a sister named Rachel. "You used to race him to the bus stop," he said. "That's how I knew." He handed her a photograph. Tommy, smiling, tooth missing, arms slung around David. Like brothers. "I don't know what happened to him," David said. "They moved him one day. We never saw him again." Rachel invited him in. He declined. "I'm in a program now. Staying sober. Promise Survivors Network. We meet twice a week." Rachel blinked. "There's a network." David smiled, shy but certain. "There is now. Because of you." That night, Rachel sat at the dining room table, Tommy's notebook resting in her lap. Her fingers traced the back cover where, in crooked letters, he'd written, "If I'm lost, find Rachel." After 30 agonizing years, she finally had. The letter arrived the next day. Unmarked, unstamped, simply wedged between a property tax notice and an envelope from the state attorney's office. Her name, Rachel Minton, was scrawled in delicate cursive. Inside, a single typed page. "I was a nurse at Cedar Pines in 1992. My role was to observe and redirect children who failed early compliance. We weren't allowed to speak unless spoken to. We weren't allowed to touch unless it was for containment. Your brother was one of the early pilot cases. He was bright, emotional. He asked for you every night. He didn't forget you. There are others, still alive, still scared. You opened a door most of us kept shut. If you want to talk, come to room 206, Willow Pines Assisted Living. Ask for Eloise. Come alone." Rachel read the letter 3 times, folded it, placed it back in the envelope, then stared out the window for what felt like hours. The next morning, she drove to Willow Pines, a modest facility nestled quietly off Highway 205, wedged between a Walgreens and a suburban golf course. The walls were painted a muted beige, the kind that tried too hard to feel warm. She approached the front desk, asked for Eloise. 206. "That's Miss Corwin," the receptionist said. The name meant nothing, until Rachel entered the room. A woman in her 70s with braided white hair and shaking hands poured tea from a chipped ceramic pot. "You came," Eloise said without looking up. "I wasn't sure I would," Rachel replied. "You should have. You were always supposed to." Rachel sat. Eloise studied her face. "You look just like your mother." Rachel's jaw tensed. "I'm nothing like her." "Maybe not. But you still carry what she started." "Then tell me. Everything." Eloise nodded. She had been 28, fresh out of nursing school. Cedar Pines told her the children came from broken homes, that the system had failed them. Project Promise, they said, was their second chance. Her first assigned child was 4, nonverbal. Every time he tried to speak, the staff hit a button that emitted a high-frequency chime, a conditioning tool, not for healing, but for obedience. They called it neutralization. Rachel's throat tightened. "And my brother? He didn't last long," Eloise admitted. "Too resistant, too emotional, too attached to you. He kept repeating your name like it was a magic word." Rachel blinked back tears. "They moved him," Eloise continued, "into the field program, the homes. They placed children in private facilities, some with real parents, some not. Your parents, they weren't just volunteers. Your mother helped write the curriculum. Your father built the rooms. The princess room was a prototype." Rachel stood, pacing, rage simmering. Why control? They thought if they could create obedient children, they could prevent crime, eliminate poverty. They used trauma as their blueprint. Where are the others? Eloise handed her a manila envelope. Inside were photographs, former children of Project Promise. One girl stood out, curly dark hair, eyes far older than her face. "Her name's June. She was in the room next to Tommy's. She's been waiting to meet you." 2 days later, Rachel found herself driving into the Washington Hills. The safe house looked like an old bed and breakfast turned sanctuary. No signs, no fences, just quiet healing. June was older now, in her 30s, but unmistakable. She opened the door, silent at first. "You're Rachel?" "Yes." June stepped aside. "Come in." They sat on the porch. The air smelled like pine and something else. "Resilience." "I remember him," June said. "Tommy. He was brave, always sneaking food to the littler kids, telling jokes. The supervisors hated him, said he was contaminating the program." Rachel's fists curled.